Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. I'm Nick Park, and in yesterday's Take 5, I was talking about the situation in Japan, where because of the aging society and because there's increasing poverty and loneliness among older people, that there are a lot of old women that are ending up in prison. And some of the prisons look more like nursing homes in Japan. Women's prisons are more like nursing homes than prisons. And the prison guards, whereas before they were basically maintaining order among the convicts and just making sure they stayed locked up. In many prisons now, the security is much lower because nobody wants to escape. They're actually happy to be there because they get free medical treatment in prison that they don't get if they're on the outside. And even now, some prison guards are having to be more like care workers or social workers, to the extent of having to care for elderly convicts and change their adult nappies, diapers, and everything else. It's really quite a tragic situation. And as part of the report that CNN did on this, they interviewed an elderly lady called Akiyo. That was actually not her real name. She was so ashamed of her situation that she didn't want her real name to be used. But she'd been sent to prison twice now for stealing food. And she explained to CNN that she'd been lonely, she'd been hungry, and her 43-year-old son had lived with her and had kept saying to her, "I just wish you'd go away." And now Akiyo had gone to prison for a second time. She had gone away, really, into prison. And now she'd finished her sentence. And speaking to CNN a month before her release, she said, I'm full of shame. But I'm really afraid to go and face my son, but I plan to face him and to ask his forgiveness for what I did. And I'm going to be frank with you, as I read that, when I was reading this article about these elderly female convicts, I felt compassion, I felt grief that elderly people would be put into that position. But when I read that last bit of the article, I felt anger, and the anger was at the son, at this elderly woman whose 43-year-old son had apparently been sponging off her and said, just wish you'd go away. And then she goes to prison for stealing, and she wants to ask her son's forgiveness, when I believe the person who should really be asking forgiveness in this situation is the son. Should be asking his mother for forgiveness and for his culpability in her ending up in this situation. You know, the way we care for older people in society is indeed a mark of our compassion as a nation and as a people. And I believe that has direct bearing upon us as Christians. Whenever Jesus Jesus said those words where he said, "I was in prison and you visited me, I was hungry when you fed me," it may well be that in our modern societies today, if Jesus was walking with us and saying that same parable, or coming out with that same saying, he would instead be saying to us, "Inasmuch as you care for your elderly relatives, inasmuch as you help the elderly, you have done it unto me." We as Christians have a responsibility for those who are the weakest and most vulnerable in our society. Now, we've often said that extends, for example, to the unborn child. That's why we have such a passion for life, and even life before birth in the womb, because the unborn child is a weak and defenseless member of our society. But we need the same compassion for those who are getting older and older and need care. And that extends to our spiritual care as well. That extends to how we as Christians care for older people and present the gospel to older people as well. You know, I see a lot of strategies for churches, how to reach young people, how to reach youth, how to reach the Generation Z, this Generation Z, everything else. But you know what? We have an obligation and a mandate and a calling from God to reach an older generation as well with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I would love to hear of churches doing that. And I would just pray that today God would speak to you as if you're a believer in Jesus Christ. I pray that God would speak to you today and show you how you can help an older person. My experience is that older people here in Ireland are becoming more and more receptive to the gospel of Jesus Christ. There really is a spiritual openness there. May God show you a way that you can care for an older person in a practical way, but a way you can care for an older person by showing them the love and the gospel of Jesus Christ. May God bless you today. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.